Good evening. I'm Phil Aaron, editor of the Delaware County Daily Times and DelcoTimes.com. Welcome back to another edition of our live stream internet show. We call this little show Live from the Newsroom. That's where we take the issues that are making news and headlines here in Delaware County. We examine them, we bring in some of the people who are making those headlines, and we sit down and we talk about the issues of the day. And not necessarily today, but for the last couple of months, and exactly 6 days from today, Delaware County, and in fact the rest of Pennsylvania, will once again go to the polls. The guess here is that we are not going to be standing in long lines as we did back in November in the presidential vote. This is a different animal. This is a municipal primary where the parties select their candidates for county offices as well as municipal and school board governing bodies along with magisterial district judges. That is not to say this election is not terribly important. Very often, the people elected to these posts will have a bigger effect on your everyday lives than those elected to statewide and national office. And we have joining us tonight to talk about this coming primary election, two men who have a lot of experience doing just that, governing at the local level. I'm joined to my left by longtime Springfield political animal, I guess we could call him. He's chairman of the Springfield Republican Party, longtime commissioner in Springfield and former county commissioner Mike Puppio. And to my right, the longtime, not really a long time, how many years now? 4 years?
Yes, 4 years.
4 years, Democratic Mayor of Swarthmore, Rick Lowe. A reminder to our viewers, this is an interactive show. We've been asking for your questions, and we've got some of them ready to go, lined up, and you can log on to DelcoTimes.com, take part in our live chat as we talk a little bit about politics. Gentlemen, I want to start with some numbers, specifically a story that we ran a couple of weekends ago, noting what is clearly becoming a changing demographic here in Delaware County. Let's talk a little bit about voter registration. There was a time not that long ago when the county GOP enjoyed a nearly 3-to-1 voter registration edge. Slowly but surely, that margin has been eroding. Now it is almost even. Unthinkable, unheard of just a few years ago. There are 384,433 registered voters in the county as of April 29. Of those, 170,160 are registered Republicans, while 169,423 lean to the Democratic side of the ledger. That, my friends, is a total of just 737 voters. Mike, John McClure must be rolling over in his grave. What's going on here?
I think there are a number of things that are going on. And I guess the first aspect of it, and you would probably expect me to say this, is that I know that I think that the Daily Times loves writing about this changing margin. And hopefully you will love writing about a change of margin if there were to be an increase in Republican registrations at some point in time.
Sure would.
But what do I think is going on? I think a number of things are going on. I think some folks from the Philadelphia area who are used to who were registered as Democrats their entire life in Philadelphia are moving into this area. Yeah, and motor voter is simply, it's not necessarily, I don't want to say a conscious choice anymore, but it's something they have always done or been, and it's simply a choice that they continue to make. I also think that there are significant outreach by the Democrat National Committee, the National Committee, and organizations like Move On and their subsequent predecessors to simply go out and register folks, and register anyone and everyone that they possibly can. And I'm not so sure how much thought goes into all that. But I guess more importantly, from my perspective, I think it's not the numbers that count when the last day to register is. It's the numbers that count on the first Tuesday in November. Are the ones that are important. I will always hold to the fact that there is, when it comes down to local government, it's very difficult to govern in a Republican or Democrat way. You're either governing efficiently and effectively, or you're not at local issues. I relate a story of when I was commissioner in Springfield, and a woman, I was going door to door and working, and a woman asked me if I was pro-life or pro-choice, and she said, that's the only issue I'm concerned about. I said, ma'am, I'm in charge of your garbage men. Did they pick up your cans on Monday and Friday? Did they put the lids back on the cans? If so, I'm your man. If not, then you should have an issue. I could think everybody should be permitted to undergo that medical procedure. I could think nobody should be permitted to undergo that procedure, and it doesn't matter. And I think that while there are numbers that are changing, I think that as long as the Delaware County Republican Party and the local Republican organizations continue to place candidates who are effective, community-oriented, and provide responsive government, will continue to be successful. And I would conclude by pointing out that numbers aren't everything.
Nope.
You mentioned a significant historical figure in Republican politics.
Yeah.
Take you back to 1974, and
Bob Edgar.
At that point, absolutely. At that point, Bob Edgar won. I think there were a significant sweep in the House seats as well as the senatorial seat, and that had to be with a 5 or 6 to 1 registration. Voters aren't sheep; they're not fooled, and especially in these local elections, they pay attention. They look at the qualifications, and that's where the success has been.
Rick, what do you make of the changing numbers?
I think it's great. I think
I'm not surprised.
with all due respect to Mike and my friends on the other side of the aisle locally, I think the days of the Republicans being in charge of Delaware County are numbered. If you look not only at the numbers that were on the front page of the Delco Times a few Sundays ago, which was fun to see, look back to 2008 when President Obama won big in Delaware County. 2012, he won even by a larger margin and was only one of 5 counties, I think, in Pennsylvania to win bigger in 2012 than he did in 2008. So you have this bit of a dichotomy here of the county being energized when they see someone sticking up for democratic values on a national level. And it's not just, by the way, the president, it's also with Senator Casey did really well here. The problem, I think, is that it hasn't yet translated, of course, into local elections.
I was just getting ready to go to that point. I wanted to flip the tables on you and say, well, if that's the case, and you've got all these numbers moving in your direction, and you're seeing some gains, you've elected a congressman who in turn gave his seat up to run for the Senate. It went back into the Republican side of the ledger.
Right.
The county obviously is going Democratic in presidential votes. Why can't the Democratic Party make a dent in that courthouse? You've been unable to do anything at all there.
Well, you'll ask me that in late November, and you'll see how that's already occurred.
I have every intention of
and I'm ready to talk about it then. I'll tell you why. Because it's hardest for the people to understand what's going on a local level. Look at how the county government is run. I'm serious about this. The county council does not televise its meetings. It has meetings during the day.
They've gone out taking those out on the road.
Oh, but they've only been during the day, and
they've had a couple night meetings.
Okay, a few night meetings, but they don't televise. Even though Swarthmore, Morton, Rutledge, Lansdowne, Yeadon, and Ridley Park all do, and plenty of other places, I'm sure. So why they're not doing that, and why a guy who's working in the press sounds to me like he's almost defending that, I don't understand that. They should televise. It's that simple. In Delaware County, what do they have? They have the most recent minutes, and those minutes are very hard to follow because they refer back to agenda items instead of talking, in easy terms. And they don't even have that related agenda. They have the agenda for the next meeting there. So what's that telling you? It's telling you that it's hard to figure out what's going on. Quite frankly, the Delco Times does not have that many articles about what the county council is doing. I saw one this morning, and I was happy to see it. And they did take that meeting on the road. In addition, when you look at the county budget, which, by the way, is $550 million a year. That's $500 million plus. That's B as in bloated. B as in bloated. When you look at that budget and then you look at the detail, it's in code, literally has codes. So you cannot, unless you're one of the insiders, you cannot figure out what this county, your county, is spending money on. So when you ask, why can't the Democrats, why haven't they gotten traction yet? It's because there are so many obstacles that those in power have placed there, perhaps on purpose, in order to make it harder. It's going to be coming.
The Home Rule Charters changed in the mid-'70s. All 5 members of the council at the county level are voted across the county, and not once in that time, not one Democrat elected to the board. Why is that? Why has the Republicans been so successful in dominating county government?
Oh, well, I think there are a couple of reasons. I think first you have to talk about, again, 1974, and 1975 was when the Home Rule Charter was put into place. And at that time, Delaware County had a form of government that was consistent with Montgomery County and Chester County. And as I alluded to in my opening comments to you, at that point, the Democrats, with a margin of much greater than they had at any point in time, had basically swept the slate and said very much the same thing that Rick just said a few minutes ago, which is, we're on the come. We're coming. Yeah. We're going to get you. And Bill Spengler, who was a county commissioner at the time, participated in and thought that this was the way. This is my opportunity. This is the key to the gatehouse, and we're gonna set this up. And
all 5 at-large.
All 5 at-large, and we're gonna get them. And it hasn't happened since. Yep. And it hasn't happened since, not because I respectfully disagree with Rick. Not because of any sleight of hand or any shadowy information. It hasn't happened because Delaware County is a well-run county. Delaware County county government is by its nature somewhat amorphous. It's hard to actually tell you. Both Rick and I could tell you what Swarthmore Borough does and what Springfield Township does very quickly and easily off the top of our heads. When you ask the average person what county government does, it fits somewhere in between what the state does and what the local person does. The budget that Rick just mentioned, B for bloated, the majority of that's a pass-through from the federal government. The majority of that is pass-through money for the health and human services that the federal government passes down, and even is required to have the states administer. So to say that we as the Democrats have lost because they set the rules, I respectfully disagree with. I think that each individual election is judged by its own merits, and and you just pointed out, Congressman Joe Sestak came and won, and when he was up for re-election the following year, or 2 years later, he had a resounding re-election with a 96-97% voting record, consistent with Nancy Pelosi, not consistent with the views of the 7th Congressional District, but folks like Joe Sestak, and they voted for him. I think it is candidate centric, and I think the Delaware County Republican Party works extremely hard at looking at folks and promoting them from local government up to the county government, you have to have a knack for this stuff. It's not. It truly isn't. It truly isn't. It's not Mr. Smith goes to Washington. I guess.
Let's take a look at some of the county races. The truth of the matter is that at the county level, in the races for the 2 seats on county council, the county row offices, controller, register of wills, and treasurer, those races are basically already pretty much set. Both the Republicans and Democrats have their nominees in place. We have 2 incumbent Republican councilmen. Longtime former state rep Mario Severa and Dave White are running on the Republican side. They'll be challenged by Democrats Bill Clinton from Upper Providence and Pat Worrell from Chester. With that being the situation, Rick and Mike, both of you, with the fact that being that it's a municipal primary, the county race is at the top of that ticket, those races already being decided. One of the things that we look at almost always in these off-year municipal primaries is that turnout is a huge problem. How do you get people to go out and vote on Tuesday?
You explain to them how important it is that they do vote, and I think there are also ways, as Mike alluded to, of bringing in more progressive ways of dealing with folks, which when Obama ran showed you could really get people out there. Yeah. There are some serious reasons to be voting on May 21st, most especially for the county judges. And the Democrats, if I can speak to that,
sure.
Have 2 extremely well-qualified candidates. One, who is Nancy Walker, has been a practicing attorney for more than 20 years. She is the only woman running as a judge in a county where the women judges, when you count up the numbers, are much less than the men in the courthouse. So she has a chance there to far from bring parity, but at least get a step in the right direction. She has done a lot of work for the working men and women of Delaware County. She's done arbitration, litigation, mediation. She's very well-spoken. So she is an excellent candidate to become a judge. The other, Steve Chanison, is the only former prosecutor to be running right now. And his credentials are stellar. By the way, Nancy is no slouch academically. She was executive editor of University of Pittsburgh Law Review at the law school there. She's sharp.
One of the issues that we probably should talk about a little bit is that, when people, sort of look the other way and think about non-voting on Tuesday, specifically in these judicial races, Mike, is this idea that, of course, in the judicial races, one thing we always deal with is the idea of cross-filing. And people that don't vote on Tuesday may be somewhat surprised to find out that choice has already been made for them when November rolls around.
Well, look, I think the first thing that, and I'd be interested in Rick's opinion, the Republican candidates are going to hold serve on the Republican ballot. Mm-hmm. Democrat candidates are going to hold serve on the Democrat ballots. The folks that are coming out in this primary are the party faithful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have, the Republican candidates for judge, District Justice Rich Capelli, lifelong Delaware County resident. He's been District Justice out in the Concord area for 15 or 20 years. He's great at what he does, very popular, practices law here in media, member of the Delaware County Bar Association. Chip McCready's practitioner in Delaware County, former president of the Bar Association, family-type firm. Both of our candidates are consistent to me with what answer the question as to why do I think they run. Delaware County Bar Association, Bar Journal. All right. Neither of the individuals that Rick mentioned are members of Delaware County Bar in 2012. They may be today. Mm-hmm. They might be right now. But that's like my 10-year-old telling me he's going to be good, before Christmas. They want something. Our folks are of and from practice law in and serve the people of Delaware County. Extremely smart.
Yeah.
But we sat next to a lot of smart folks in law school, and they're not necessarily good lawyers.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the smart
excuse me.
ones,
Let me.
but they're not necessarily the good ones. And
Let's
that's
get
what
back
you
to
need.
Steve Chanison, because you are correct, Mike, that we're going to have a choice between somebody whose friends elected him to a local bar association, and that's pretty much the pinnacle of what I understand his legal chops are. I mean, I'm not trying to say he's not a good lawyer, but in terms of what's on the resume, I think that stands out as probably the highest. Chanison, in comparison, was on the law review at University of Chicago Law School, which is one of the best in the country, after being summa cum laude at the University of Pennsylvania. And then he went on to be a law clerk to Justice William Brennan in the U.S. Supreme Court. So the people of Delaware County, and then, by the way, he went on to be a prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office, worked for a private firm for a while, I think, and then became, while he was a professor at Villanova, which is where he is now, appointed to the State Commission on Sentencing by several Republicans and a Democrat, I believe, governor, and now heads up that entire commission, and he teaches to the State College of Trial Judges. He teaches judges in Pennsylvania. So what we're going to have is a choice for the people between what Mike just said and artfully stated and clearly stated, two fine people, versus somebody of Steve's stature and Nancy's background, which, of course, none of the others have, being men, right? Somebody of Steve's stature, and the best thing that can be said about him, against them, the only thing that can be said against them is they're not members of the Delaware County Bar Association.
Let's talk a little bit about,
but I think the people are going to realize that what they really need is the quality that these people bring.
But I don't, if I could just respond
Sure.
very briefly, it's not that they are members or aren't members, and I'm not by any stretch criticizing the qualifications of Mr. Chanison or Ms. Walker. They will speak for themselves. What I'm saying is that when you are, the analogy I'm making with regard to being a member of the Delaware County Bar Association is that's what it goes back to the answer to your question. Why haven't they cracked the cycle? Well, why haven't they done that? Why? Because the folks, if you live in Alden, if you live in Concord, if you have a problem, Chip McCready's and or Rich Capelli are the people that you encounter to solve that problem. The Court of Common Pleas, you can read I was a law clerk for a judge up here on the Court of Common Pleas. You can read any bench book you want, written by the most erudite individual possible. None of that is going to provide you with the training and the practice that you need to become a good judge, like practicing law for the folks that you're going to be served as a judge, and those are the two Republican candidates.
Let's talk a little bit. Wait a second. I want to move on a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Tuesday. I'm going to be the arbiter here, and I'm going to set a line. I'm going to set the line at 15%, and what I'm talking about is voter turnout. Mike, you're going to go over or under?
Over.
How much?
18.
18. Rick?
I'm sort of right between the two of you. I don't have a strong position on it. Obviously, we all three of us around this table would hope that it's higher. I think what's going to happen, though, is that as time goes on, let me backtrack a little in order to answer this question, but
Quickly.
A bit of a response to what Mike said. I think this whole idea about the Republicans putting up great candidates since 1975 is a myth, with all due respect. What happened around that time is after Bob Edgar won, you realized you had a 6-1 margin. So if you got rid of the minority party, then you could run the table for 30 years. And that's exactly what you've done. And the only time that that has changed is now, in the last few weeks. So to say that you've won because you have so many more, to say that you have better candidates, even though the real reason is that you simply have more Republicans, I think is a myth. And
but that's
obviously
been eroding that whole time, and these margins in the county races have not gone down at all.
But it's only...
How can you look at the last election when the county went so heavily Democratic presidential, and yet all those voters split their tickets and voted for Pat Meehan? I mean, how do you explain that?
Because, well, some people like Pat Meehan. That doesn't mean that the Democrats aren't going to be able to win at on a local level. It is not simply because that all the Republicans are so much better qualified. And Pat Meehan in particular, as you can see recently, has gotten one of the most gerrymandered seats in
that wasn't in effect for that.
Okay, but that's what they're doing. That's how much they fear the Democrats. That's what they've done. The state senator, Dominic Pileggi, and with Judge McEwen, they tried to split Swarthmore in half. You don't think they're scared about what's going to happen? And that's what they end up doing with the reapportionment. I was one of the plaintiffs in that case that stopped them from doing that. It was so blatant what they did that even Chief Justice Castile came down against it.
Let's talk a little bit about the county races and looking at the county in general. Again, this is a municipal primary. This is where the parties nominate their candidates. So sometimes you'll have a situation within the party of candidates facing each other. I want to know if there's any specific areas that are really hot races. One that has sort of popped out to me. I don't know if you know anything about this, Mike. What is going on in Ridley Park? They really have their factions down there.
I don't know specifically what their issues are, but Ridley Park Ridley Park is a good example of I guess the disagreement that Rick and I disagreement within the party and the philosophy that Rick and I just mentioned. I really don't think registration. I don't know what the registration is in Ridley Park, but I don't think it matters a hoot. I think it matters as to how hard the candidates are, who the candidates are, and how hard they work, and whether they're able to convince their friends and their neighbors that they are a better steward for their tax dollars than the opponent. Ridley Park, if I recall, Ridley Park was Republican for an extended period of time, had a period where Brian Lentz was the state rep, and their local government was controlled by Democrats, and now they're Republicans. So I think it's the quality of the candidate. I really think in these local elections, turnout is, I don't want to say so low, but it is the folks who are coming out on May 21st and on the first Tuesday in November are folks that are paying attention. They're not folks who, it's not water cooler conversation at their workplace. Oh boy, big municipal elections coming up. There really needs to be a really, really hot topic for that to happen. Therefore, those folks that are coming out are folks that take their civic duty seriously. And as a result, they do the research. And I think there will be times, as Congressman Edgar, as Congressman Weldon, as Congressman Sestak, and as Congressman Meehan, they don't win because of some registration difference. They win because they were the better candidate and/or ran the better campaign.
Rick, one of the other big focuses that we'll have are the 15 public school districts in the county on Tuesday. Obviously, parties nominating all their candidates. We've been focusing fairly strongly on one in particular simply because of the struggles that they've faced in recent years in Upper Darby. Fierce battle there. Again, if you ask most people here in the county, after they get done talking about crime, everyone wants to talk about property taxes and the way schools are funded. Are you finding, is there a difference? Is there a new, sort of a reinvigorated interest in serving on school boards?
I think so, and I think Upper Darby is showing how people are so engaged and it's so sad, of course, that they're considering cutting back on the arts. I think, though, that what people are going to have to realize is that that the county cannot just remain status quo. And if you look at the way the county government is run, people are going to realize that in order to help the schools, the county's going to have to be more efficient. I'll leave you with one fact here. As I understand it, at Fair Acres, there are more people who work at Fair Acres than there are residents. That, if true, and I believe it is, doesn't seem to be reasonable. It just at first blush, it seems there are too many people compared to the number of residents. The citizenry is going to have to work harder, maybe, and we're going to have to work harder, as Mike points out, to explain to them how this inefficiency hurts, so that we can take our limited tax dollars and give it to the schools like Upper Darby, so they can have their marvelous art program and their theater that's nationally known.
I think, to answer Rick's question, I think the example would be a hospital. There are certainly more employees at a hospital than there are patients.
Yeah.
And that, to me, makes sense.
Yeah.
So I would think there are more employees at Fair Acres than there are residents. These are folks that, as Hubert Humphrey said, society is judged by the way we treat our young, by the way we treat our old, by the way we treat our infirm. With regard to schools, look, that's how I make my living as a school district solicitor. Right. And there is, and Upper Darby is not cutting their budget this year.
Right.
I believe Act 1 has taken the air out of a lot of the property tax issue. Act 1 was designed to put a limit on school districts. And what I mean by take the air out of it, salaries go up, food goes up. It's the cost of living that goes up. Mm-hmm. I think I would submit to you that a constituent of a well-run, efficient school district that provides good results would accept a 2 or 3% increase in the cost of doing business if it meant to continue the appropriate service. So that's what I mean by the air is taken out of it. I can assure you there is no Republican way or Democrat way to govern a school. There's only an efficient way to do it. Here's where you might see Republican and Democrat issues on the first school board, the first week in December, when it comes time to reorganize. Yeah. But after that, I really, in my professional opinion, you can have whatever voting block you want. There's no R or D way to administer our schools. There's good ways and there's bad ways. Yeah. And Delaware County is a microcosm of Pennsylvania when you go from Radnor to Chester Upland.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have one of the highest achieving districts and one of the least achieving districts, and all of the things that go into the challenge of public education exist here in Delaware County.
Two things looking ahead, as we are want to do, can't resist looking ahead a little bit, and two very, very big political stories that are going to be developing over the next few years here in the region, in the county, as well as across the state. And that is a name that popped up earlier in the show. Joe Sestak made news again this week. He has announced that he is not going to run for governor, that he is very likely, in fact, I think we're going to have a story tomorrow that says that he is, in fact, going to run again for the nomination to go for a rematch against Senator Pat Toomey. Something I did not know that I learned today, and I find this hard to believe, but Pennsylvania has never, not once, ever had a rematch in a U.S. Senate race. This could be the first. Mike, a question for you. Were you surprised at Senator Toomey's position on expanded background checks?
No, I was not.
Help him or hurt him?
Help him.
Moves him a little more to the middle.
I don't think Pat Toomey made that. I loved reading all of that about Senator Toomey, that this was done for some calculated political move.
Yeah.
I significantly disagree. I am pleasantly surprised with Senator Toomey. I believe Pat Toomey has been a voice of moderation on fiscal issues. He's looked to reach across the aisle and bridge the divide. Look, that's what politics is about. The problem on both sides of the aisle is that, and especially in Washington, is that we have become polarized,
You're not getting much
refuse
done.
to talk about
Yeah.
things, refuse to compromise. I guarantee you, if there were an issue between the border of Swarthmore and Springfield, and I were an elected official along with Rick and I would be able to solve a problem without compromising our principles. Am I shocked by doing that with Pat Toomey? No. Was I shocked by Joe Sestak not running for governor? Yes,
Yeah.
I was. I personally
Rick, were
think he was the
you
strongest
surprised
candidate.
at Mr. Sestak's not going against the governor?
No, I assume that he figured out that the best thing to do was not run for governor, so he's taken a good second position. So we'll see what happens. It's a long way away.
Yeah.
Let me get back to Pat Toomey. I was involved with that myself as a very active member of Mayors
Against Gun Violence. Sure.
Mayors Against Illegal Guns.
Illegal guns.
I joined the day after I became mayor back in 2010, and this January there was a national meeting down in Washington, mostly Democrats, but about 20% or so Republican mayors. So it was a nice cohesive group, bipartisan. And we, from the Pennsylvania, there were 10 or 15 mayors from Pennsylvania, and we had the privilege of meeting with Senator Toomey's staff, his chief of staff, and his national security person, both in Washington, D.C., and had a very frank and good discussion with them. It was clear to me and others in the room that the senator had an open mind, and we were delighted when he stepped up. And if you read the Delaware County Times, you'll see that I had written a letter a few weeks ago, I believe the only letter from a Democrat, supporting Senator Toomey for his efforts. And it is not done yet. And you talk about going across the aisle. Here's what would really be neat, to have State Representative Joe Hackett step up. I understand that he is considering supporting gun control legislation in the State House. I would love to talk with him about that. And the Mayors Against Illegal Guns are eager to have him join the team, and anybody else. I think it'd be wonderful if the leaders of Delaware County, the Republican leaders, stepped up and showed that this was a bipartisan effort. I know that Delco Times has done so. It'd be nice to hear more. There have been some local Republican mayors who are a part of Mayors Against Illegal Guns, but now that we have some of the focus shifting from Washington to Harrisburg, for us, it'd be great to see more people doing it. Meehan has stepped up, and Fitzpatrick, and it'd be good to have more.
Mike, that leaves us with the other name that we mentioned there. I guess that you could, one way of looking at this is that a guy who certainly could use a break finally got one, if you want to look at it that way, and that is Governor Corbett. He has had his struggles. One of the things that everyone always tells you is that, hey, there's a long time between now and when that election comes forward. Is he still in a position to recover some of that ground?
Oh, absolutely. Look, Governor Corbett is just not a flashy guy. And when you follow Governor Rendell, who was a true gregarious man, very skilled and erudite politician, and somebody who was very able to take his case and make his case to the press and to the public at a moment's notice. That's not Governor Corbett's style. Look, Governor Corbett took over during one of the very difficult recessions. Governor Corbett, come next year, will have 3 on-time balanced budgets without all the drama that went with the Rendell years, fighting into August, well past the constitutional mandated budget time. And I think Governor Governor Corbett is going to be able to present a case that Pennsylvania has, under his leadership, has lived within its fiscal means. There are folks who are definitely happy about certain things, and there are folks that are unhappy about certain things. That's every state budget. But I certainly think the answer to your question is I believe that Governor Corbett, while not a flashy guy, has done a fine job as governor for the state of Pennsylvania, faced with some difficult economic challenges, and needs to and has kept the economic engine of an aging state going. And branching off in some different directions.
Rick, when this all shakes out, who's the Democratic candidate for governor going to be?
Allison Schwartz, and she's going to become the first woman to be governor of Pennsylvania. Mike, you speak very well, but I have to disagree when you say that Governor Corbett's problems are merely superficial in his demeanor. You remember a few years ago, he cut back the school funding terribly, especially with the colleges, the state schools. His flip-flop on handling Penn State was not something anybody should be doing. And there are just articles in the paper every day about how he was giving away the store on the fracking. So if he really wanted to be fiscally conservative, he would have followed Texas and other states that had higher fees for the fracking. So if he is unpopular, I think it's by virtue of his policies, not his personality. I think personally he's a good guy, just is not doing things that are good for the Commonwealth.
All right, we'll go to our what we refer to always as our lightning round. It's how we end the show. We ask a question of the panel. Mike, I'll start with you. Tuesday, tell people one thing that they do not know about the primary and a reason why they should get out and vote.
Well, it's the most. If you are a party, if you're a party loyalist, it's the most important election that you can have. And you're talking about
can't vote for a candidate unless you nominate them.
That is correct. And if you're talking about things like school board and commissioner, these are the local elections. Phil, you opened your comment. I think you received a copy of my what we call in Springfield as the Record, which is our newsletter. And I think that was my exact opening paragraph. These off-year elections don't get the attention they deserve. And what I try to tell folks is these are the elections that truly impact you, that impact your daily life, more than, in my opinion, say the President of the United States. President of the United States and Congress and folks set a whole lot of general directional terms. There's a problem on Baltimore Pike at the intersection of Swarthmore and Springfield. To keep it common to this table, that's going to be impacted by Swarthmore Borough Council, Mayor Rick Lowe, Springfield Township Board of Commissioners. That's where it happens. It's where the rubber meets the road, especially when it comes to schools and things like that. So I can't tell you there's something that they might not know, but it's the election to pay attention to.
Rick, why do people want to go out there on Tuesday?
This is going to be the first chance in most people's lifetime that the Democrats have a good chance of taking back the government in this county. The Republicans are led by folks who give jobs to each other, who solicitorships are mostly among a select few. They find ways to be helping each other instead of looking out for everybody. And there was never a way to really fight back until the numbers changed. And now that the numbers have changed, you can't fool all the people all the time. And sooner or later, the Democrats are going to be able to get together and do something about that.
There you have
Now
it.
is the time to start it.
our preview, I'd like the readers and the viewers a reminder. Why don't you make a liar out of the editor of the Daily Times? I've set the line at 15%. I'd love to see that number come in 25, 30%. You have the power to do that. Get out there and vote on Tuesday, the municipal primary election. My thanks to our panelists,
Hear, hear.
Mike Puppio, a longtime figure from Springfield, Swarthmore Rayer, Rick Lowe.
Nice.
We'll be back next Tuesday night, or next Wednesday night, rather. Every Wednesday night, live from the newsroom, 7 o'clock. We'll talk to you then. Thanks.